Bill Maher didn't just challenge Sonny Hostin, he obliterated her talking points and torched the entire woke bubble she was standing on. It wasn't a debate, it was a controlled demolition. Maher cut through her arguments with brutal clarity, leaving the room stunned. The wild twist? They're supposed to be on the same political side. But Maher made it crystal clear he's done tiptoeing around the new progressive rule book. He refused to play along, refused to flatter the narrative, and let Hostin know he won't bow to her version of approved opinions. This wasn't left versus right, it was Maher versus the manufactured moral code of modern Hollywood, and he walked away owning the moment. So what did Maher drop that sent the woke crowd spiraling and had Hollywood clutching its pearls? And what does this showdown reveal about the brewing battle inside the left? Strap in, because the fallout from this moment is explosive, and the truth behind it is even hotter than the outrage storm it triggered. When Maher showed up on The View to plug his new book, nobody expected fireworks. Yet what should have been a friendly promo chat instantly turned into a blowtorch session. The longtime liberal comic stunned the room by aiming his fire straight at the very crowd that usually cheers him on. It felt less like an interview and more like a roast, where the guests didn't realize they were the main course. The spark? Sonny Hostin tried to pin him down, pressing him on why he dares to call out wokeness. She thought she had him trapped, but instead it lit the fuse that set the whole segment ablaze. Hostin thought she was pulling a power move, trying to box Maher in by hinting he was betraying the very crowd he comes from. She tried to paint him as the guy throwing stones from inside the house. But Maher isn't new to this game. He spotted the trap from a mile away. The moment she tried to twist his words into a gotcha moment, he shut it down and exposed the tactic for what it was. A classic woke spin job designed to corner anyone who steps out of line. Maher's opening counter was smooth and strategic. Instead of taking the bait, he explained that language evolves. A term can shift meanings as culture changes. When he uses woke, he's talking about the radical edge that twisted the word far from what it originally meant. Hostin expected him to buckle under her accusation, but the opposite happened. She stepped directly into his counterattack. Maher turned her challenge back on her, making her confront the very trap she tried to spring on him. Did you catch that moment? Bill Maher, a lifelong liberal, openly admitted he was stunned when parts of the ultra-progressive crowd started showing sympathy for Hamas. Yes, that Hamas, the organization known for rejecting Israel's existence and carrying out brutal attacks on civilians. Their actions have sparked fear and devastation for years, yet some activists who brand themselves as champions of justice suddenly acted like this violence was something to justify or celebrate, all while condemning Israelis simply for being there. Maher, despite his left-leaning politics, was just as shocked as anyone watching these extremes unfold. It was a rare moment where he made it clear this wasn't activism, it was radicalism crossing a line. Maher didn't let the moment pass. He pointed out a truth the panel clearly didn't want to touch. Even the hosts of The View, Hostin included, would choose life in Israel over living under the harsher conditions in many Palestinian-run regions. He argued that Israeli society aligns far more closely with American freedoms and values, and in doing so, he exposed an uncomfortable contradiction. The loudest critics of Israel rarely acknowledge that they themselves wouldn't tolerate the restrictive systems they're defending from afar. Maher dropped the politeness and went straight for the core hypocrisy, calling it out as it unfolded. Maher didn't stop there. He struck again by pointing out the massive gap in women's rights across many Muslim-majority nations, the same region some ultra-progressive activists bizarrely romanticize. He essentially challenged Hostin and her crew to actually visit those places and witness what life is like for women who have far fewer freedoms. That quiet surgical strike left the table rattled. Sensing they were losing ground, the panel launched the predictable pivot, accused him of ignoring innocent civilians. Hostin tried to corner him with references to casualties and the ICC's actions against Netanyahu, as if that would erase everything he had just exposed about internal contradictions on the left. She tried to twist the narrative into Maher supports violence, the oldest desperation move in the book. When the debate falls apart, attack your opponent's morality, but Maher saw the trap coming long before it was sprung. His response cut straight through the theatrics. He reminded them that the situation is a war, a brutal one, triggered by an attack, and Israel responded as any nation would when under threat. Then he hit her with the question she clearly didn't want to answer. Should Hamas be dismantled? Hostin stumbled because agreeing would undercut her own argument, and disagreeing would expose her to criticism. Maher used that hesitation to deliver a masterclass in debate strategy. He broke down Hamas's open declarations, their repeated assaults, their use of international aid for weapons and tunnels instead of improving life for their people. His point was simple. If a terrorist group is openly committed to wiping out a nation, how exactly does anyone expect peace without addressing that threat? Hostin had no real answer, because there wasn't one. Maher forced her to confront the reality she was dancing around, and when she attempted one more emotional appeal, he shut it down with brutal clarity. Wars are horrific, civilians suffer, and that's precisely why the violence must stop at its source. If Hamas stops attacking, the bloodshed ends. His final punch was the hardest. He called out the modern obsession with narrative over truth. Too many people, he argued, parrot half a story and expect to be believed. He doesn't trust either side until he digs into the facts himself. And he wasn't about to let anyone twist his stance into something it wasn't. It was the kind of takedown that left the table stunned and exposed just how shaky the arguments against him really were.